Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What's today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 7th day of January. Just like I said yesterday, don't assume that these are going to be only firings that will happen. A lot of times these things develop throughout the week. Mike McCarthy still has not signed a contract with the Cowboys. The Bears want to talk with Mike McCarthy. Rand Carthon, the general manager for the Tennessee Titans, was fired today. Tony Pierce was fired, the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'll talk about that coming up. I'll talk about Pierce and, of course, Rand Carthon here out of Nashville. 30 minutes past the hour, Rich Ferris will be back on the program here from Titans Flagship, 104.5 The Zone. He'll be back on here. We will be talking about the Titans situation with the number 1 overall pick, the general manager search, and whatnot. So stand by. We'll take our first and only break. We'll be back here momentarily, and we'll hit the ground running here on the Real Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program.
I'm Mac, CEO of National Streaming Sports and host of the Mac and Jack Sports Show. You're watching the sharp-dressed man and the big story breaker, Robert Butler, on Sports Scope, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on National Streaming Sports.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows, giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
All righty then, I'm back here live. Let's see where to start now. Okay, we'll start with the coaches. People know more about the coaches initially coming in than the general managers. Antonio Pierce was fired today from the Raiders here. And now it's reported that Adam Schefter is saying that Tom Brady is expected to be a part of a collaborative committee to interview head coaching candidates to support the team owner, Mark Davis, there, down there in the Raiderville. Schefter says that the Raiders endured a 10-game losing streak during Pierce's full time as head coach. It was also the first time they went winless in the AFC West. So I did not know that. You look at the coaches there in the AFC West, you've got Sean Payton, Super Bowl winner. Jim Harbaugh Super Bowl in the Super Bowl, and you've got back-to-back Super Bowl champs there in Kansas City. Harbaugh's been to a Super Bowl, of course, and then Sean Payton won a Super Bowl. Now you had, obviously, Andy Reid, 2-time, potentially 3 straight Super Bowl. So you're going uphill battle there with that. But that being said, I mean, you look at the fact that the Raiders did not. I mean, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, he's been known as a backup in this league. I mean, the guy's got his 2 hands tied behind his back and telling him to win football games. I get that. But ESPN also put this out. Last year, remember, he took over in the middle of the year last year. So you got a little bit of John Gruden's team in there, and then you got a little bit of Josh McDaniels' team in there, a typical Raider organization that's all over the place. But opponents' points per game, they were tied for the number 1 defense in 23 for first there. And then this past year, 25th. Point differential, 4th in 23. In 24, 27th. Turnover margin, 5th. They were tied for 30th in 24. Las Vegas finished dead last in the division. So, I mean, they're 5-4, finishing out the last 23rd season, 4-2 in AFC champ. And then they blow out the Chargers. Now, that was last year. A lot of that was the players. Josh McDaniels. The players could not stand that guy. They were really, really hyped up to play under Antonio Pierce, and they just could not. They really hyped up to play under Pierce and wanted to play for their job at that point. Then they kind of came down to earth a little bit this year. Had a pretty good draft, though. I like Brock Bowers. But when you don't have quarterback play, things seem to fall apart. One thing goes into another there. Remember, the final straw for him to get the job last year, 1 year ago, a little bit over a year ago, was when they beat this Chiefs team that went on to win the Super Bowl on Christmas Day in 23, if you recall. And quite frankly, they played again. What was it? The Friday after Thanksgiving, and that was a 2-point game to Kansas City. That being said, Mark Davis, typically a guy who really cares about what people think. He really cares about perception and winning the moment. What I mean by this is he feels like that he probably should have went on and hired. This is my speculation. This ain't what it's at, but this is me looking at it from the outside in, that he should have stayed with Rich Bisaccia. Who's Rich Bisaccia? He was the guy the year before last that came in when Gruden stepped down in the middle of the season, okay? Well, we're talking 22 now, right? Because of the issues with the emails and the I think it was this Bruce Allen or whatever with the going back years, the ESPN, the stuff with back when he was at ESPN, John Gruden, the emails, the racial emails about what did the executives with the NFL and whatnot, black guy, whatever. And you had that. You had the stuff with you had the receiver that had the tragedy there with the car accident. Everything kind of went off the hinges. Gruden forced to step down. I don't know if he actually, somebody told, we still don't know the answer to this. Did somebody tell from the NFL, Mark Davis, you really need to fire John Gruden? This makes the whole league look bad. Or he just thought, overreacted and fired John Gruden. I wouldn't have fired John Gruden. I'd tell him, hey, make a statement, apologize. It was supposed to have been a private email. Even if it wasn't a private email, it was inappropriate comments. Move on. The team still played hard behind him. They were still winning games. That's what should have happened. That was BS. And, of course, John Gruden ended up suing the whole league for it, and rightfully so, because everybody's emails need to come out. Then we'll start, if you want to start misogynistic comments or whatever, racial comments, then we'll start letting everybody get out of the league. How many people's going to be around here? You know? So all that being said, he steps down. Bisaccia comes in. They get to the playoffs with their car on the team, and they almost beat a team that ended up going to the Super Bowl in the Cincinnati Bengals, if you recall. They got their playoffs. They fell up short. Josh McDaniels ends up getting the job, and he moves off of the special teams coach. And then there was just 1 year with fallout with Big McDaniels. It just wasn't working. He's not head coaching material. And then Pierce takes over, and the team plays better for a few games. So he gets the job. Now it's 1 year under Pierce. They're, 4-13 or whatever. And now they're going to be picking 6 in the draft. And he decided today, for whatever reason, I don't know if he changed his mind overnight, stewed it over for 24 hours after the season ended. But today we know that Pierce is let go. And now Tom Brady is going to be in the mix of helping pick the new head coach. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I want to say I may have mentioned it to Keith Angle or somebody, that there were rumors that Brady was pushing to maybe get Bill Belichick to coach the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, of course, Belichick has taken the job with the Carolina Tar Heels, the college job. That job can be bought out in June. I don't know if they would do it. Mark Davis is game enough to do it. Bill Belichick is sneaky enough to try something like that. I still don't know if they would actually do it. I wouldn't be surprised, because then you're recruiting guys, and then for one season, just to tell them you're not going to coach there in June, then they'll have to go to the transfer portal and move all their stuff to another campus. That would be wrong on Belichick's on so many levels there, and it would make Brady look bad as well. I don't know if that would happen or not. This team's roughly got about $70 million in cap space. They've got the 6th overall pick. That last win, a couple of weeks ago, that dropped them way down in the draft. They went all the way to 6th. That's why I was telling people, if Tennessee won Sunday, they could drop potentially to 9th, perhaps, in the draft, because there's so many teams with 3 and 4 losses coming in. Of course, they lost, and they had some help from New England, who had the number 1 pick and jumped them. But the Raiders, I said, what about Dion? There was also talks that maybe Dion would be interested. Dion as the coach, maybe a Schroeder Sanders. They desperately need a quarterback now. So they would have to essentially work out a trade with, say, a Tennessee at 1, or a Cleveland at 2. Now, Deshaun Watson, the problem with that, he's had a setback with his injury. I think he had an ACL, whatever, Achilles or whatever. He's had a setback with his injury. They might want to draft a quarterback with that number 2 overall pick. A lot of the talk, it's early in the process, that it's Cam Ward and Schroeder Sanders for that 1-2 quarterback, and then it drops off the rest of the quarterbacks. It's early. We haven't had workouts yet. We know how momentum gets caught up in the underwear Olympics with the you got the NFL Combine, and then you got Pro Day there. You've got the Pro Days coming up and all that stuff. But listen, today is January 7th, 3.5 months from now. Bam, it's draft night. So be a lot of talk. You hear a lot of Mel Kiper mock drafts. You're going to hear a lot of rumors and stuff. You're in a lot of crazy stuff. Maybe a quarterback we've never heard of jump up out of nowhere, play and look really good, and stock may go up. So it's an interesting job. Could you get the 1-2? I think he could, because the Raiders play inside. That would be interesting for a Schroeder Sanders. Not sure if Dion will want to do it. I know they got a left tackle that they like. I know they've got Brock Bowers at tight end. They have Max Crosby there on the defensive side. It's not a total awful team, but we'll see what Tom Brady does. Could Tom Brady recruit a Mike Vrabel? I don't think so. I think that the New England job, by the way, Vrabel's scheduled to go tomorrow too. I think he'll probably get into that. interview for that one first, probably take that job, and the Josh McDaniels, Mike Vrabel back to New England, that would probably make more sense considering the fact that they've already got a quarterback and they've got about $120 million to $30 million, depending on what site you look at, in cap space. So a lot to do. As far as the Raiders, it depends how much Brady can sell the other coach. Do you want to bring a Flores there? Do you want to bring a Todd Monken there, an offensive guy, worked really well with Lamar Jackson, had success in college with Georgia there, also has NFL experience? Possibly. Obviously, everybody's talking about Ben Johnson with the Bears there. He'll be looked at as well. So it's going to be interesting following these coaching searches as time goes on. That's a heavy lift down there in Las Vegas land. You just got to wonder how much of a salesman that Tom Brady is. Okay. Before I get too far ahead, it's already 7:16. The Tennessee Titans, as I said this time yesterday, don't assume anything. Don't assume that everything is all said and done because we got through Black Monday. That's not that didn't happen. Ryan Carthon has been fired by the Tennessee Titans. And listen, folks, the bottom line to that is when you miss on a quarterback, that there's a chance that the team could totally fall off a truck there. There's a chance that the general manager could get fired, even though he's made some good hits everywhere else. Joe Douglas with the Jets here, offensive rookie of the year a few years ago, defensive rookie of the year a few years ago, 3 years ago, I want to say, with Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. And now he's been fired by the Jets over this past season because he missed with Zach Wilson, because he botched the Aaron Rodgers thing. He missed with that. You can say whatever you want, but it just is what it is. They're not in the playoffs. They've got about, 4 or 5 wins. So he's out the door, but he's hit on a lot of other players, but you got to hit on that. When you miss on a quarterback, and that was Will Levis, but it is what it is. When you miss on a quarterback, that's like having a brand new car, great interior, great exterior, excellent setup on the radio, excellent battery, tires, you name it, body style, but the engine don't work. That's it's useless, man. It's useless. And that's how driven this league is. It's a quarterback driven lead here, Cad. It's a total quarterback driven lead. There's a lot of notes on this. I thought Rand Carthon, I thought he did well with some of the moves that he's made here. I've got a bunch of notes here. Let's see. For example, Carthon signed a highly successful wide receiver with proven success. A lot of people wanted Calvin Ridley. Okay. He drafted well in both drafts. He traded up. He traded for a top defensive back in the league in L'Jarius Sneed in the 3rd round. The Titans at one time were second in pass defense. They finished with second in total yards allowed. He flipped the 2026 6th-round pick for Jerome Baker and a 2025 4th-round pick. They have 2 4th-round picks. He traded DeAndre Hopkins and got a 5th-round pick. That can turn into a 4. I thought maybe he could have done 4-3, but he, if they make the Super Bowl, okay. So he has done that, and they got $50+ million in cap space this year. But if you look at, again, not to sound like a broken record, you look at Will Levis, 12 interceptions, 10 fumbles. That's 22 turnovers there in 12 games. Like I said yesterday, in 12 games. So you miss on this guy, and then it is what it is. The 3-14, they look like a total disaster. They need some depth They do have some issues at linebacker. They do have issues with some of the coaching staff there. That's not on him, although I think he did hire Callahan. That would be on Callahan. But what I do not like about this, from what I've read, and by the way, watching and reading all the comments, all the voices from the Titans organization on this. You know, when he was hired, Amy Adams said, I want to make sure that there's a proper structure in the, and I agreed with her. I agreed with the owner of the Titans. There should be a proper structure. The general manager needs to pick the players. The coach needs to coach the players. You have to have you can't have it where, and that was a knock on Vrabel, he's wanting to pick the players and all that. A coach can have some say so if a player's in the league. If a guy gets cut from another team, hey, I like that guy. I've been in the league a few years. Or, hey, it's trade deadline time. Let's see, what do you think, general manager so-and-so? What do you think about us going after player X here and giving up some reasonable draft capital without overpaying for him? We need another tackle or defensive tackle or a receiver, running back or whatever, you know? What do you think about that? But as far as the draft is concerned, no, absolutely not. The coaches should never draft the players. That's what your scouts are scouting all year for. Your player personnel people, let them do their job. You know, let them do your job. So she put that in play. Now, of course, the Titans have been 9-25 since Carthon was hired. We all know that John Robertson was fired the year before that. So you look at it that way and you think, okay, well, yeah, that you look at the last two seasons, you've had injuries at the quarterback position. You've had an offensive line that's going back, not this past year, but last year, that fell apart. You've had a team that just needed to be retooled and is flat out rebuilt, you know. So you start to look at that and you say, well, this record's terrible, but you got to look at proper context in the way this thing come about here. All right. So, hey, you got to have a fall guy here. And he's the guy that's picked the players. And it's simply, and it looks good to make that move. Another thing I don't like about this particularly is why are we hearing from this CEO guy? I think his name is Nye or whatever. And then you've got this other guy. I'm going way away from my notes here. This assistant general manager here, and Rich is back behind stage. I'll bring the great Rich Ferris up on here in a minute. Let me go back here and look here to make sure I've got my ducks in a row here. She kind of reminds me of Sheila Ford here, this Amy Adams Strunk, where she's making some really aggressive moves. That's the lady with the Chad Breaker. Yeah, that's the guy I had in my notes. I couldn't find him. So you got this guy, Chad Brinker, who's 13 years with the Green Bay Packers. Then you've got this other guy. Why are these two guys talking? And then you've got the owner up here talking. So now you go from one guy doing everything, which could be, perceived as Mike Vrabel, to now you're hearing voices all over the place. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Too many cooks in the kitchen. So now we're trying to figure out who's doing what. How come Blinker just don't take the job over, So without further ado, from Titans Flagship 104.5 The Zone, Cumulus Sports Station, Rich Ferris here. But let me make sure and get the crowd ready, because it's always good to have a guest on the program. Man, I was just going to ask you about the draft and everything, and then then more drama comes about with the Titans firing Randy Carthon. It's pretty confused. I know you're listening backstage, brother. Rich Ferris, 104.5, the Zone, the Titans flagship. Doesn't it seem a little confusing with hearing two different voices and who's doing the hiring and all this? What's your thoughts about all this and how it went down, essentially, with the firing of Rand Carthon? Excuse me.
Yeah, so when you asked me to come on the other day, I totally had a different material that I was ready to talk about. Even knowing that this was looming and that this was a possibility of somebody being fired, everybody being fired. But now that we know and everything is seems to be announced and set, it is pretty. At first my initial thought was I was hoping that they would retain everyone, and that might be in the minority. But I was thinking if they retained everyone, you would have some consistency going into next season.
Yes.
And, I think the problem is going into the season, and even me was hoping that, you had enough talent on the team to have a little bit of a competitive team that could possibly push for a wild card maybe if everything goes right. Yeah. And it didn't. And it went way, obviously being the worst team in the league with the worst record, and didn't go that way at all. So, I was thinking, the expectations maybe have been too high, knowing that you really are rebuilding. And that might have been the problem is hey, we are rebuilding, instead of just coming out and saying it and expecting that. We're here now with those high expectations and then not delivering it all and end up being having the worst record in the league. Yeah. So I wasn't surprised that somebody got fired. I'm a little surprised at how it all went down, and I'll get to kind of the hierarchy that's kind of clear now, but it wasn't before.
Yeah, let's hear this hierarchy, because it's pretty confusing if you ask me.
So Burke Nihill is the president and CEO. He is basically Amy Adams Strunk, the controlling owner's mouthpiece and right-hand person, and Chad Brinker is essentially that on a different level. So interesting enough, when Rand Carthon was hired, he hired Chad Brinker to be his assistant GM along with Anthony Robinson. And so they came in January of 2022, right?
Okay.
2023. And, teamed up with Mike Vrabel. Obviously that season wasn't that great either. A lot of turnover there. Obviously having to clean up John Robinson, the previous GM's mess.
Yes.
And
it's a pretty big mess too.
Yeah, and so kind of a long story short, we all know Vrabel ended up getting fired because they wanted to establish this certain hierarchy with who has a say over the 53-man roster, because Vrabel had some input and had some say and wanted more control and wanted the entire control. And Amy Adams, Burke Nihill said, no, we don't want that to happen. We don't think that would be successful.
Yes.
Fires Mike Vrabel, and then decides Rand Carthon will be the GM and president of football for all the football operations.
Yes.
And then Chad Brinker was then essentially put in a role above Rand Carthon, which really didn't seem like a big deal at the time. Obviously does now. So Chad Brinker is the actually president of football operations over the entire team. So he oversees the general manager, oversees the coaching, and oversees pretty much anything that involves with the football side of things. Where Burke Nihill, the president and CEO of the team, is more so over the business side, the admin side of things. So it really, I don't think that it was really well known that was the hierarchy at the time, and it looks like that now. Obviously, with this whole collaboration thing that they were preaching over the last year, certainly seems that Rand Carthon was the odd man out of this collaboration effort, and heard of different reasons today, which I learned quite a bit of possibly them just not agreeing on work ethic and certain roles and everything that he
Okay, you
was
mentioned that.
picking up.
Let me ask you this real quick. Was him not going to the Senior Bowl, was that a big knock on him?
I believe he did go to the Senior Bowl. I think he may have
Or was
left
it
a
a
little
combine?
early.
Something. He left early. Okay,
There was a something that he left a little early, which
okay.
really isn't that uncommon, and it's kind of hard to say now when people are reporting that there was possible issues with how Chad Brinker and Coach Callahan seen Rand's ethic. I don't know all this to be 100% true. Obviously, it's from one side of the story, but it's very clear in the messaging today from Chad Brinker and from Burke Nihill that they're looking for somebody that their entire life is going to be working on this roster.
Yeah.
Even though this new GM coming in that they're going to have to look for is going to be more of a glorified scout, glorified assistant GM, if you really read through all the details. So Chad Brinker is now going to have the overall say of the 53-man roster and directly reports to Amy Adams-Strunk with all football operations. And Burke Nihill is going to continue with the business side of things.
So this guy's essentially really the general manager now.
Yeah, and he was assistant GM for Green Bay under Ted Thompson. It was one of the best GMs in the league.
Yes.
I have a lot of confidence in Chad Brinker. I had a lot of confidence in Rand Carthon. Yes.
You talked to him?
Yes, and I've even had a conversation where during training camp where he mentions how he thought Rand Carthon was one of the best evaluators he's ever been around. And he's been in the NFL for 17 years, primarily with the Packers as a scout, as assistant GM. A lot of things that Brinker was more known for was really diving into analytics and mastering how to do analytics, a lot of how to crunch cap numbers and, really evaluate the draft and understand how to get value out of the draft and where to pick big guys and things like that. So his background is more in the scouting, in the roster building through the draft. And if you read a lot of the messaging from today, that's what he's looking for as a GM. Again, GM in quotations, because he's going to have the overall say and have a lot of input into how this team is built moving forward.
So really, it's his assistant, essentially.
If you read through it, it's what it seems like.
Okay.
It said in one part of Jim Wyatt's article for the Tennessee Titans, it mentions they'll have fingerprints on the roster, but it doesn't say anything about them having complete, responsibility for the roster. It mentions they want to build through the draft and be very selective in free agency and try to retain guys that they drafted and build through that way, which is the way to go. But you have to be good at it. Obviously, coming from Green Bay, they've been extremely good at that.
Yes.
And they're one of the youngest teams in the league and are having success. It's very. I didn't like the firing of Rand Carthon. I like Rand Carthon. I thought that he's, even going back to what Chad Brinker's saying, that he's one of the better evaluators he's ever been around. Yeah. I think that too. He had a lot of input in when he was with the 49ers. However, there were a lot of concerns when Vrabel was asked about Rand Carthon coming in. He didn't think that he was ready for all the responsibility as a GM.
Yes,
and
I read that today too.
That's been a little bit of some of the feedback of that was kind of the downfall, so to speak, of Rand Carthon was not being able to do all those responsibilities to the manner of which Amy Adams and others wanted.
Well, I tell you what, I looked in the numbers yesterday, and they're second in yards allowed in the NFL. So there was something with the defense. I'm like you. We talked about the L'Jarius Sneed. I thought it was a good trade. You know, I still think it was a good trade. I mean, we can't help the guy get hurt.
Injuries are just bad luck, and yes, they're definitely a part of it. But having a key player like him out on your defense definitely caused the defense not to be as good as you want it to be.
Right, and then you got Calvin Ridley. You got 1,000 yards out of him with two quarterbacks. One's a lifelong backup.
And I will say, just to jump in, Calvin Ridley would not be here if it wasn't for Ran Carthon. Ran Carthon told me in May after the draft the reason why they were able to get Calvin Ridley is because he himself called and spent hours talking to him, getting to know him, getting to know his family. They had him on their radar as a free agent, but they had others way ahead of him. But then when those free agents didn't work out, they had the money that they knew that they could go get Calvin Ridley. But it was Ran Carthon who called his agent, set up a meeting, and he said this was like 3 o'clock in the morning. They talked for hours, got to know each other, and that's what was Ran's strength, is these relationships he would build with players and agents and all those things, and convinced Calvin to come here instead of staying in Jacksonville, because Jacksonville basically offered him the same deal.
Yeah,
but told him to come
into it too, right? They were in the mix too at the time.
Who was that?
New England was in the mix.
Yeah, them too, and so he convinced them to come to Tennessee, and he did. And I don't think he's he himself would admit he didn't have the best season, but he still had a really productive season. Had 1,000 yards receiving. It just, you had poor offensive line play on the right side. You had inconsistent quarterback play, and he still ended up being very productive as one of the positive things this season. So going to Rand's strength, building relationships, and being able to and the guys that he scouted and brought in, I know it was it's kind of up in the air how much Chad Brinker was involved. So. With the draft and all those things, but Rand was definitely the relationship guy that really did that kind of the side of things to know if this player was coming in was going to be a good fit here.
Yeah, and you said you wasn't really sure about Will Levis, who really had to say. It all comes down to the Will Levis thing. Quarterback plays great.
Well, and if we go back, so I don't consider that draft completely Ran Carthon.
The last time we talked, you mentioned
he just came in that January. None of the scouts for the board that was built wasn't his. It was the assistant GM that was the interim at the time. That was John Robinson's assistant GM.
Okay,
who I thought was a good assistant GM, and he's still in the league. He's somewhere as an executive. Yeah. I think that he would have been a fine candidate to be a GM here. If they would have retained Mike Vrabel, and that's what Mike Vrabel wanted, because him and that assistant GM name I can't remember at the moment.
They collaborated.
They were more on, and that's what Vrabel wanted him to be the GM. Obviously, Burke Nihill, Amy Adams decided to go with Ran Carthon, and the rest is history. But that 2023 draft was primarily Vrabel's input, that assistant GM at the time's input. The board was already stacked and built. Ran Carthon came in, mid-January, and I think a few days later was having to go to the Senior Bowl. And so, the Skronsky pick was primarily Vrabel's input. The Levis trade pick was primarily Mike Vrabel's input. And so, I don't really count the 2023 draft completely on Ran Carthon. However, I do think this 2024 draft was completely his call, and I think he did a pretty good job. You got 3 for sure starters out of this draft already. Brownlee Jr., the corner, he was a 5th round pick. You got J.C. Latham, who's now your left tackle, who's going to be a good player. And Trevon DeSweat, the defensive tackle, who's a lot of people are raving about. So, and I think they still got others like James Williams, who you got late in the draft, who was a safety in Miami, now middle linebacker. He's had some significant stats. Cedric Gray from North Carolina, he was a 4th round pick. He had a lot of injuries to begin the season, but ended up being a starter these last few games. So always got to take 3 years to really evaluate the draft class, but I think overall this year he's done a good job, not only with the draft, but with free agency. I thought they brought in good free agents. We already talked about the Snead trade. I thought was worth doing, but
Cushionberry wasn't bad. He got hurt too, though.
yeah, he got hurt. Same thing, with a few other players, but I think ultimately there were two major things of the reasoning after reading everything today and talking to people of why Rain Carthon is out. And one, I think that's just the hierarchy of this struggle of this power that they set up, where this was supposed to be a collaborative thing, and Amy Adams wanted to try this collaborative approach when the year before she didn't want that because Rabel wanted control.
Right.
And so they did this three-way dance where Rand Carthon will have the say with the 53, but he's going to have to collaborate with Chad Brinker as well as the incoming coach, end up being Brian Callahan. And so they tried this three-way dance. Ultimately, it didn't work out because of disagreements, is what I would assume. And ultimately, Chad Brinker said, we got to cut him out.
Man, that's something. Okay, so let's talk about the actual pick here. I'm one of the few, a lot of people, they're picking last and a terrible team. I said, listen, man, they've been bad for a while. They were picking 7th a few weeks ago. Now they got caught some breaks and got number 1. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing around the station about that one pick? Is it Schroeder Sanders? Is it Cam Ward? I know it's early in the process. Maybe trade down. What's your thoughts about that, having that number 1 pick and the biggest need, obviously, quarterback, man?
I think everything's on the table.
Go ahead. If you need a cough, brother.
I think everything's on the table.
Yeah. You got to take a swig. I have to do it all the time. Folks, it's really bad weather here in Nashville. It's freezing outside, and we've all got colds.
Yeah, I think everything's on the table.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they feel about the quarterbacks. Obviously, with a new GM coming in, there's a lot to discuss. That's really up in the air. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, they've got a lot to work with. Having that 1 pick, you hear about Coach Prime. He put out something when Carthon he put that on the X app when Carthon was let go today. Look at a guy like Schroeder Sanders. Colin Cowherd says he hears from scouts that this class is not as good as last year's class. That this class,
definitely not.
It's a B-level quarterback class, and I thought, well, Schroeder Sanders has a 71% plus completion percentage. It's the highest ever in FBS history. I looked that up yesterday. You look at that. That's collegefootballstats.com or whatever, and he's a 4-year starter. He's 6'2". Look at his height. He's taller than Kyler Murray. He's same size as Lamar Jackson. And who's the other? Bo Nix, having a great year. As Bo Nix, he's taller than Russell Wilson. So, I don't know, man. So, it's somewhat of a crapshoot at quarterback anyways. And then Cam Ward's the same height. He's at 6'2". He's got a 68, 69% completion percentage. He's got 3 full years of starting. I say these years starting. You look back, guys like Mitch Trubisky, 1 good year. Zach Wilson, 1 good year. Did not work. Anthony Richardson. These guys are better prospects than him. He had 1 good year. So there's a lot that Tennessee could be optimistic about with that pick. The flip side, like I said, he's not saying that's his opinion. He's saying that he's hearing from scouts. I think Peter Schrager said that too with Fox Sports as well. So that would be, if you want to be Debbie Downer, he's hoping.
Yeah, I mean,
luck, man, in this draft.
They 100% need to add a quarterback. There's no question.
Yeah.
Will Levis may be here as a backup. They may trade him. Not sure. That's got to work itself out. Obviously, did not have a good year. did not have the year they expected. The prospects this year just isn't good, especially having the number 1 overall pick. You almost wish the Titans did this last year or are going to do this next year. But the Sanders and Ward pick at 1 overall just doesn't set well with me. I think if you stay at number 1, I think you got to take the best player in this draft. It's no question who the best player, and to me, that's Travis Hunter.
Okay. Yeah. Hunter's a great player. He feels like a can't miss. Who was the other guy? That Grayson Mam, Graham, that defensive tackle from Michigan, seems like he's can't miss.
Oh yeah, and the defensive end outside linebacker from Penn State, is another one. I think they would entertain, but this is going to be up to the new GM and ultimately Chad Brinker of who they want to do, or who they want to pick at number 1, or if they want to trade it. I think they'll have a lot of calls, especially with the Browns and the Giants picking right behind them, the Saints, the Raiders, and who knows who else may fall in love with one of those quarterbacks and want to jump ahead of the Giants and Browns. So I think they'll definitely entertain some calls. But if they stay there, my hope is Travis Hunter. I just think he's the most talented person in this year's draft. And I would even play him both ways like you did in college.
Okay. Yeah. And then what do you do at quarterback? Do you get Kirk Cousins? I mean, you're just kind of stuck back at square one, I guess.
Well, I think you could still, maybe take a flyer on a, in the second round, maybe somebody like a Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, maybe even later in the draft and see how that works out. I think you definitely bring in a better veteran than Mason Rudolph. I think you bring in maybe even entertain a Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or it really depends on.
Get cut from the Jet. That's a good point. He may get cut and be a 1-year bridge guy.
And I think there's Sam Darnold, who is looking really good with the Vikings.
Yeah.
They got to make a decision. He's on a 1-year deal.
Right.
So the Vikings got to make a decision whether they want to keep him and decide what they want to do with JJ McCarthy. They have a good thing where they have 2 quarterbacks that they feel good about. But one of them you would think would have to go. I don't know if you sign Sam Darnold to a long-term deal, I don't know if JJ McCarthy would just sit there, for 5 years. But, there's some options as bridge quarterbacks as that's out there, but not a lot of good ones.
Do you think Derek Carr will get released from the Saints?
I think they have to. Just their cap situation is horrible. Yeah. And he's just not been that good. He's a name that's out there. I don't know how I would feel about David Carr here. I don't think highly of David Carr. Okay. I think that he's solid. I don't want to say like bad things about him. I just don't think he's a guy you're going to be like excited about if he comes here.
Yeah. I just don't. Chad says Geno Smith. See what I'm saying? Those are, see that right there. It's getting to that bridge quarterback now.
I think Geno Smith is under contract with the Seahawks.
He could potentially get. I don't know if they would release him or not, Chad.
No, I think he's done too good of a job there. I would be shocked if they. And that might be one of those teams that you just don't necessarily think. Or look what the Falcons did last year. Taking Penix. There may be a team that want to, take a flyer like that, and that you'll be surprised. But as of right now, all the players that for sure are in on a quarterback, it just kind of sucks that there's not a really good class coming up. At least we think. Right.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in between. I'm not totally sold. It's total garbage. I don't think these guys are like who's the guy that the Titans picked up? Not Christian Ponder, that guy that Titans drafted a few years, 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago. that was
Jake
bad.
Locker?
Locker, yeah. I don't think they're that low of a talent level. I think they're a step above him. Who would have thought Russell Wilson would have did something being drafted in the second? What was there?
He was in the third round.
Third, yeah. I mean, Dak Prescott. So,
yeah,
it's a tough decision. Whoever takes this job, it's a tough decision. But Carlos mentioned the Raiders and Schroeder. The Raiders at 6. Could you see them? You know, Mark Davis is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Giving up a whole lot of picks to Tennessee.
I would earmark the Raiders as the probably primary team that, you know, and they got the 6th pick, so, you know, you're not moving back that far. You know that if you're confident that, you know, 2 of those picks are going to be quarterbacks, then you can still move back to 6. Maybe pick up that third rounder that you lost to the Chiefs to get
that's what I was
Snead. And you get a first rounder next year because, look, I think the Raiders, even if they do draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, I think they're still probably going to be bad next year. They just fired their coach today, so they're going to have a new coach. They're going to have a new quarterback that we all have been talking about. We're not sure if they're going to be those dynamic franchise quarterbacks in this draft.
Yeah.
So your first rounder next year is probably going to be a high pick too. I think that's the prime team and position that you could work a deal with that would be fair, and you won't be moving back too much in the draft, and more than likely will take the 4th best non-quarterback player in the draft.
Yeah, and here's the thing. At 6, he's going to have to come up with something. So you're coming from 6 to 1. Remember the 3 first-round picks in the Robert Griffin trade? Let's go back just here recently. Who was it? The Bears and the Panthers.
Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, they gave up the first round. That ended up getting Caleb Williams, but also they got DJ Moore, a star quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think they get multiple first-round picks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they would get, you know, especially as in love as it seems the Raiders are with Shedeur Sanders, that they would probably give up a pretty good thing. I mean, a pretty good amount of capital because you got, you know, 2 teams that are picking right after the Titans that are going to more than likely be after a quarterback. So if that's the guy you want, and you want to go get him, you better be making the call to the Titans pretty soon and try to figure something out. Yeah.
The flip side is, though, if you're Brian Callahan, do you want to be gambling your career with the bridge quarterback?
That's the thing, and I think going back to a lot of the statements that were said today, after after the firing of Rand Carthon, it certainly seems like Amy Adams has put Chad Brinker as the president of football operations and has complete control of that, as well as the coaching staff. And going to bring in, obviously, a new quote-unquote GM. But, yeah, I think, okay, and in this messaging, it mentioned of patience and building things through the draft and ultimately staying on course for however long it takes. But we've kind of seen Amy Adams act without patience, so... how patient are we? Can we give another bad year or not without firing not only Brian Callahan but Chad Brinker as well? So yeah, it will be a big gamble on if you do draft a quarterback that's maybe not should have been drafted that early, or take a bridge quarterback and not be good next year. Yeah. So you may have your confidence now that you can have a long-term time to develop everything, and right now they're saying we believe in Chad Brinker, we believe in Coach Brian Callahan, and want them to build through the draft and continue that course. That's going to take time. I just don't know if Amy Adams will act emotionally like she has in the past, and I would like to see things play out longer term. I mean, I just think that this John Robinson basically butchered 3 drafts in a row that set this franchise back tremendously.
What do you think happened to him, man? He got wild there at the end, didn't he?
I think the problem with John Robinson, he went all in on the window that he had to go get a Super Bowl and pretty much focus on that versus long-term roster building, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It really does. I don't know if Carlos is talking about trade Callahan as well.
The coaching, I mean,
Trade the
I don't know who would want them right now after going 3-14.
Did you hear that maybe the Bears are interested in talking to Mike McCarthy?
I think Dallas denied them to talk to Mike McCarthy. However, they did talk to Mike Vrabel, or going to, as well as the Jaguars. So Jaguars, Jets, and everybody assumes the Patriots are going to talk to Mike Vrabel. It would be very interesting if Mike Vrabel ends up being the head coach of the Jaguars and kicks the Titans' ass a few times a year down the road. But
they got a good roster. They just need the culture builder, like a Vrabel or maybe a Flores.
Well, I'm a little surprised that they kept their GM too. I mean, I'm surprised that they did. I'm surprised the Colts did.
Hey, did you hear that? I don't know if you caught this or may have followed me on the X app, but Trent Baalke is their general manager, and the NFL Network people let it be known that the new coach will report to Sean Khan or whatever his name is, the owner, not Trent Baalke. So apparently, coaches and people he's a good talent evaluator, and they cannot get along with this guy. Byron Leftwich did not want to take that job because he didn't like Trent Baalke. Neither did Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, that's another question mark of why keep the guy then. If I mean, look at Harbaugh. He's in the playoffs right now, and given that he went to probably the best situation because that team was, you have your quarterback, you have a lot of good players, I think though it depends on if Mike Vrabel still is adamant about having control, and ultimately
that's my issue too, man.
Ultimately it's a team. Are they willing to give that control if he still wants it? I think the Patriots would do so. The Jaguars are in a situation where I think they could probably do that if they don't really feel that confident about their GM.
Right.
Another one would be, to think about is the Raiders, because Tom Brady's got a big say in the Raiders, and they just fired their head coach. And maybe they want Mike Vrabel. It hasn't really
played together. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're very good. They're very tight. So I mean, I think Mike Vrabel is going to be the hottest coach in this whole process this year, as well as maybe Ben Johnson from the Lions.
That you read that off the top of my head. Yeah, it's Ben Johnson, it's Vrabel. Todd Monken's not getting a lot of hype from Baltimore. I don't know. I'd interview Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for Baltimore.
He's definitely been in the mix, I think, a few times. Did some interviews, I think, even last year. But ultimately stayed at Baltimore. And, I mean, what Lamar Jackson's doing this year is pretty incredible. Having the best year he's ever had. He's
right there for MVP again,
Yeah, I think it's between him and Josh Allen. I think if you really look deep down into the statistics and success, I mean, I think Lamar probably should get it again, but, voter fatigue might hit people, and Josh Allen's done some incredible things this year too, and, I think Josh Allen, it's between them two, but one thing real quick to kind of jump back to the GM discussion with control and all that, one thing that was said today from Chad Brinker was that he feels that the general manager position has evolved, and there's so many aspects of managing an NFL roster that it's going to take more than one person to do GM duties. And so I think there's because Paul Kaharski did an article, and I think talked to Chad Brinker today about why isn't he the GM then? And it seems like they're in this expansion of the GM role as of this collaboration that they're trying to do, where multiple people, it needs multiple people to run the management of an NFL roster. And Chad Brinker ultimately said that he has the overall say, but he wants somebody that's going to do these certain things while he does these other things. It doesn't believe that one specific person can do all of these to be successful.
Yeah.
So, and Josina Anderson's tweet a couple of days ago that even, kind of was one of the first people to mention, hey, watch the Titans GM spot.
Yes.
That people are asking, that league officials are asking, and I think it was more so about this because, there might be owners and officials asking, well, if they're doing this and restructuring where there's not only just one general manager but multiple people that are going to be managing an NFL roster, what does that look like? Is there rules or policies in place that are being violated here? Can we do this? So I'm sure those are a lot of the questions that Josina kind of mentioned or is hearing. And just kind of reading through everything today is what it seems like is what she was kind of mentioning there.
Yeah, you hear the terms capologist, and you got to have that aspect of it. Then you got to have the draft personnel part of it. You're dealing with numbers. Then I read that he actually hired Callahan, so that it's evolved into a big job. You know. That capologist stuff, I mean, that give me a headache just thinking about it.
Yeah, and that's what Chad Brinker was brought in to do, is be, focusing on analytics, cap numbers, value, and things like that. He has a scouting background. Rank Carthon has a scouting background. The new GM that they're wanting to bring in, they want to have a scouting background that primarily work on the draft. So it's clear. They made their vision clear, and it just seems like Rand Carthon was the odd man out here with not only maybe a power struggle here that Chad Brinker ultimately has won, but some of the things where they were mentioning about work ethic and all this, maybe that was a part of it, but that's, one side of the story, so to speak.
Right.
A lot of unknown there. I would hate, knowing Rand, I would hate to think that, but if that's what other people feel, and ultimately one of the reasons why he's fired now, then I understand the reasoning in a way. It's just kind of surprising.
Yeah, and you mentioned analytics and all that. Howie Roseman and the Eagles are heavy into that, and look how good they're doing. I mean,
they're one of the best GMs and one of the best teams in the league, and
get one of somebody from their staff, Rich.
I think there was somebody that was
to that.
Or no, it was assistant GM for the Lions, I think, was mentioned as a. But here's the thing: this role,
Brad Holmes up there.
Yeah, Brad Holmes. But this role would be, in my eyes, a lat move for an assistant GM. Yeah. I have this feeling that they're going to hire within. I think Chad Brinker may see this opportunity to hire one of his guys as maybe his head scout to come in and do this, because ultimately it's not the traditional GM role that everybody thinks. And I don't think that any veteran or person that's been a GM before is going to want to take this role because they know they're going to be managed and they know they're not going to have the full control. Yeah. So I don't see a Thomas Dimitroff or people like that are been named.
Douglas.
I just don't see that. I think that would be a downgrade to what they've done before, and I don't think they would want to do that.
Well, this Blinker sounds pretty impressive, man, now that you mentioned it.
I like Chad Brinker. I'm surprised that all this is unfolded this way.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that he, talking to him of how highly he thought of Rand Carthon to ultimately be the person that probably advocated for him being fired to Amy Adams, because like I said,
on Caesar, didn't he?
Yeah, because like I said, well, the thing is Rand brought him in. He hired him to be his assistant GM.
You take me out here. This is what I do. He's stir up the place, Rich. No,
I mean it's a valid point.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Rich Ferris, everybody. I'm way over on time. You got a show coming up. You guys, you record.
Tomorrow night. Big Ten Rich tomorrow night. Check us out. We'll be talking. We'll be updating our last week about college football. Okay. Obviously talking some NFL stuff. I'll be talking about WWE and their Netflix deal.
Oh yeah,
and
about that. Yeah.
well, probably whatever else we get into. We kind of shoot off the cuff every now and then.
Yeah, I noticed that. Right. Carlos says Nashville gets a soap opera going on at times.
That's what's so.
It's a real soap opera, ain't it, Rich?
It has been. I mean, and I think that's why everybody's so frustrated, because it just seems like there's a lot of inconsistencies here, and Titans fans have a right to be upset with Amy Adams and have a right to be mad about this whole process, especially when, in August, everybody's saying let Rand cook, and you had this standing ovation when you brought him in, and even last year saying how much you like this person, and so it's just a lot of bad optics right now for the Titans, starting with Amy Adams. So I don't expect her to really address that, but I do think we may have a press conference in the next few days with Chad Brinker, because like I said, he's now the voice of the football operations. So anything that's going to be out in the public and answer media, he's going to be doing on the football side of things, and Burke Nihill will be on the business side of things, where Amy Adams is not going to probably be in the media and take questions, because that's just not her style. And even though that many people want her to, she's going to leave that to Burke and Chad to speak on her behalf.
Yeah. She's starting to act like Jenny Buss with the Lakers here lately. Whoever talks to her last, she makes a decision with. I will end the show with this and say, I am impressed a little bit the fact that she'll spend the money. She's still paying a lot of people.
She's still paying John Robinson. She's still paying Mike Vrabel. Honestly, it wasn't that long ago she finished paying Ken Wisenhunt. I mean, he was on a 5-year deal.
I forgot about Wisenhunt.
I mean, he basically was getting paid the whole time Mike Vrabel was here.
Yeah, Ken Wisenhunt. Boy, what a disaster that was. Rich Ferris coming in from downtown. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying on the Ken Wisenhunt, I think a lot of people compare this season to that. I don't think that this Titans roster and coaching staff is that. I think it's a lot better than that. I think the culture's been a lot better, and I think that's one positive that I've liked about Brian Callahan is, those players had every right to shut it down games ago and be frustrated and cause cancers in the locker room and be mad, but they were all positive, playing hard. So I think he's started to create a culture here, and that's why I was worried if you fired. I mean, you got to let somebody build that, So if he was fired, I feel like that would be a tough go, because you're having to restart that all over again.
Yeah, I think so too. I still think that he should definitely make some adjustments on that staff. And I hope that's going to
I would expect some he hasn't got around to that. I think I would expect that tomorrow or maybe the next day.
Okay. Rich Ferris, man, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, man. Have a good night, buddy.
You too. Thank you.
Got a great guest coming in tomorrow, 7:30, folks. I'm way over. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, here on the Real Sports.